Okay, let's talk today about the thing I'm probably getting asked the most in the comments, which is how to make Gamma run better. It's a complicated question, so let's establish a couple things before we get started. This video is based on all the information I could find on the Discord, on Reddit threads, and a lot of personal testing. And I do mean a lot of testing. This testing was done on a real potato, my old desktop computer with an i7 1060 and 8 gigs of RAM, and my laptop, which I've been using for all my recent videos with an i7 360 and 60 gigs of RAM. So definitely not high-end stuff, far from it, more like middle-of-the-pack consumer stuff. This is only to give you a rough idea anyway, a reference point, because results will vary widely depending on your rig anyway. The goal here is to strike the best balance between performance and a good-looking game while trying to influence gameplay as little as possible, which I think is a fair and achievable goal for most people. I will leave a spreadsheet in the comments with all the settings I tested, how big their impact on performance were, how much they influence the looks of the game, and if it's something worth tweaking or not. I ran tests in a lot of different locations, places with a lot of character models, places with a lot of grass, trees, water, a lot of static scenes to spot all the little graphical details, and also running across levels and recording the drops in FPS and stuttering to see what's best. I really tried to cover everything to find the most balanced settings. This video is in 4 parts. First, we'll talk about what you can do in Windows and in the launcher, then in the base graphical settings of the game, then the different gamma modes and reshade, and we'll finish with covering everything about lag and stuttering. Okay, enough talking, let's get started. If your game cannot run DX11, well, first congratulations, you are a true potato owner. I'll leave some tips for you at the end of the video, but for now we'll assume we can all run it. Next, AVX on or off. Here, without going too deep into the technical details of the engine and why in a lot of cases your CPU is gonna be the bottleneck for performance, the best way is to simply try and see for yourself. I ran different scenes with it on and off and made an average of my FPS across all of them. I didn't notice any difference in stuttering, but AVX on runs slightly better for me, like a 3 FPS gain on average, so we'll keep it on. Next, we're gonna start the game, open Task Manager, go to our engine, details, and on the game executable, check that priority is on high, and in affinity remove core 0. Same thing as for AVX, it might not work for everybody and it's hard to tell in advance, so just try it. Personally, it gave me a nice boost with a 4 FPS gain on average. I found 2 other tips. One is to go find your executable in Anomaly, bin folder, then Properties, Compatibility, and there you disable full screen optimization. The other one was to try to play in full screen borderless. Both of these gave me slightly worse performance, so I'm including them just in case you want to try and see for yourself, but I won't be using them. Let's quickly finish with the launcher before going deeper. We'll talk about prefetch sounds later in the stuttering and lag section, so let's check shadow map. This setting makes shadows projected on surfaces nicer and cleaner, which is nice, yes, but the performance impact is huge. If you want to start really noticing a difference, you will need to set it at least 2560, and that's a 10 FPS hit from the get-go. It definitely looks good, but personally I cannot afford it, so I leave it at the minimum. We'll discuss some tricks to have nicer looking shadows that don't eat your performance later. Okay, now we can go over the game basic graphical settings. Vertical sync is useless, just leave it off. You can cap your FPS at your display refresh rate, mine is 60 so I should put 60. Leave a little bit of room if you want to, but it doesn't really matter. I'm leaving a much higher value right now because I'm comparing all these settings, but in practice, just cap it at your screen refresh rate. Lowering world and static objects rendering distance gives a slight boost, average of 3 FPS across all the scenes I tasted. The zone looks less vibrant and dense, we lose a big sense of depth, and I personally don't think it's worth it. The default settings are perfect where they are. If you really want to grab a couple FPS, lower them to 60% at most, more than that and it's not really worth it. Dynamic objects are the Stalker and Mutants rendering distance. Don't lower it too much, leaving it at the same as your static objects value is your best bet. or things will just pop in and out of existence, which is not the best if you want to spot enemies from far away. Shadow culling should be on, you won't notice anything in most cases, and it's a slight boost in performance. The texture settings have a big visual impact, but a low performance one. With all three settings at 50%, the game looks noticeably worse for a gain of only 3 FPS on average. So I'd say lower them to 75% if you want to, but no need to go lower than that. You have better chances using a light texture pack if you really want to gain performance with texture. Trying to do it with the sliders is not very efficient. MIP bias makes everything a little bit cleaner with zero performance loss for me, so I leave it at the max. Anisotropic filtering makes things a little bit sharper, especially the foliage of the trees, for example. It has a slight impact on performance, around 4 FPS on average. I tried to turn it off in-game and have it directly from the NVIDIA control panel. If you have an NVIDIA card, that's definitely something you can explore, but the results were not as good and performance was the same, so here it's a matter of taste. If you want to grab some extra FPS for little visual loss, you can turn it down. Anti-aliasing is really nice, especially if you don't like the flickering in the trees, for example, but damn it is costly. 2 times gave me a straight 25 FPS drop, which is absolutely bonkers, but you get a big visual boost straight away. 4 times is the sweet spot visually in my opinion, but the performance cost is way too high, and 8 times is just out of the question. So if you're already struggling to run Gamma, just leave it off, and 2 times is plenty enough if you play in 1080p for people that can afford it. SMAA does absolutely nothing for me, so I just keep it off. Okay, now grass is interesting because we finally start talking about gameplay, not only graphics and performance. Grass is very resource intensive, but without it the game looks pretty bad, and very high and dense grass will completely hide mutants, stalkers will shoot you through it, and it will eat up your performance, so we need to find the right balance. I noticed that density is actually much more resource intensive than size, so I like to slightly up the size. I think it looks much better and has a somewhat acceptable cost, around 5 FPS, and I get these 5 FPS back by slightly lowering the density. If you want to squeeze as much FPS as you can, grass is one of these settings that you can completely nuke if you have to. I like reducing the rendering distance to 70 and gain 4 FPS on average and barely notice any difference. Lower than that, you can squeeze 2-3 more FPS, but it starts getting noticeable in large open areas. Up to you, I leave it at 70 personally. Grass shadows looks very nice, but they will absolutely destroy your FPS, just leave it off. Lighting distance and shadow quality did absolutely no difference in my testing, which was a bit surprising, as I remember in my Anomaly performance video they had a big influence on how good the game runs. I tried many different settings, restarted my game countless times, cleaned my shaders just in case, and nothing, so I'll just leave them as is. Turning Sun Shadow gives a huge boost of FPS, but completely destroys the lighting, so let's just say if you're not absolutely desperate, just leave it on. Sun Shadow quality though is probably the best setting to make shadows look nicer, and it has barely any influence on performance, which is a godsend. Remember the shadow map in the launcher that could produce nice clean shadows but for a huge FPS cost? Well, Sun Shadow on medium solved this issue for free, by making them nicely blurry and smooth. I tried going higher but didn't notice any real difference, so medium it is. Here's the different results for the sun rays mode. I'd say it's a matter of taste. Screen space had worse performance, which was surprising, around a 4 FPS drop. I think the volumetric set by default is perfectly fine. The quality and intensity sliders did not do much in my testing, visually or in terms of performance, so I just leave them as is. Leave SSAO on the SSDO by default. Quality doesn't do much, I could barely see any differences, especially if your shadow quality that we set up previously is on medium. Volumetric light is nice, it can eat up your FPS in some cases, but I actually had a hard time finding these examples, so I'd say it's pretty rare, so I just keep it on. Soft water makes the water much nicer, and I did not notice any significant performance loss. Wet surfaces did absolutely no difference, which was a little bit surprising. Soft particles and volumetric smoke did absolutely nothing too, so I just keep them off by default. In the mod configuration menu, SSS settings, you can disable the interactive grass and tone down the shadows. It's not much, a gain of 3 FPS on average, but it's honest work. It's also here that you disable all the depth of field and blur effect. It doesn't really affect performance, but you can tone it down to your liking. Okay, now that we are done with all the basic graphic settings, let's talk about shaders. Everything so far was tested with the default Gamma shader. You have, of course, access to other ones that you can try out, but overall they all have a slightly to much worse performance than the basic one. Don't get me wrong, some of them look amazing, but there's no point in going down the shader rabbit hole in a performance video. If you have performance issues, you will actually want to tone them down by turning off some add-ons in Mod Organizer. Your game is gonna look wildly different, much closer to vanilla Anomaly, but it's not like it's gonna look bad, just different. And you will get a really nice boost in performance, around 15 FPS in my testing on average, which is actually a huge deal. Okay, so far we covered everything to improve your performance while changing the gameplay as little as possible. Now let's talk about the nuclear options. They're last in this video because they will definitely influence your experience of the mod, so it's a last resort, but some of them are very effective if you don't have any other choices. All these options will improve stuttering a lot in most cases too. You can go to the ZCP in the mod configuration menu and tone down the Stalker and mutant population. Reducing the amount of dynamic anomalies helps too. Then in your zone settings, reduce the Stalker population and turn off the offline combat. You either gonna need a new game or wait a couple in-game days to start feeling the difference. It's a drastic option and it's gonna make the zone less dynamic and lively, but it's a big boost in performance and for stuttering, so use it only if you're desperate. You can also completely disable reshade and reduce the distance at which the AI is loaded. I will leave the link to the framerate optimization thread on the Discord where you can find all this info, because I didn't try this myself. Ticking prefetch sounds will make your loading times a little bit longer and it's gonna be more RAM intensive, but it can reduce stuttering. Okay, I truly hope this video will be helpful for some people, as it took a crazy amount of time to test and record everything. And remember that all the detailed statistics I will leave in the spreadsheet in the comments are to be taken with a giant grain of salt. Your results will most likely vary widely from what I got, but it's a good reference to spot quickly which settings have a big influence either on performance or visual quality. And you can check the results in the video to see if you like the changes they bring or not before trying them yourself, which I think can be very useful. And as usual, I probably missed some stuff that could be useful, so if you have other optimization tips, please let me know so I can pin them in the comments.